So, we're here to talk about some ideas for the redevelopment of the building, which was the old CVS building and the old Dollar Store building. So, we're here to talk about some ideas for the redevelopment of the building that was the old CVS and the old Dollar Store building on Somerset. This is as much about listening as it is about speaking. So when Joanna tells you about the draft proposal that we have up on the board here, she's going to tell you what the idea is and why she developed the project the way it is, and then to get feedback from you. And the feedback is not only in terms of questions, but also suggestions. Because nobody knows this property more than the people who live close by. Now, we've already met with some people. We've met some neighbors who live very close to the property. We've had meetings at Town Hall. We've discussed some of these issues that might be pertinent to the business community. We met with some of those individuals at the Chamber of Commerce. So we want to make this as inclusive as we can and get as many ideas as possible and as much input as the process goes forward. We've been to the Site Plan Review Committee, which is required of any property redevelopment that involves 5,000 square feet on the as level 1, or 10,000 square feet level 2, which is our project. So that requires a major site plan review by the planning board. That is the next step. But along the way, we want people who are involved and who are interested and who live close by, or maybe who are impacted simply because you live here, to have a part in the process. Because this is as much, because it is in the Center Business District, it is as much your development as it is theirs. And mine as well, because I live here too. I'm Jim Cipolletta. I'm counsel to the developer. I've done a number of these, and I always make sure that we have community meetings. I did the hospital, the temple, the Belmare, the old nursing home on Pleasant Street. Every one of those projects came out initially negative as far as reaction from the public. They ended up positive. So if you have a comment, we're here all night, and we'll listen to everybody's comment. But please keep it brief. Please keep it to, because of the number of people here, to around 3 minutes. And if somebody has already made a point, we get it. There's no real reason for 3 people to say the same thing behind the first person, because we'll write all this down. And Joanna will be available afterwards. She'll also give you her email, her cell phone, and maybe schedule some further meetings so that we can make it possible for everyone who wants to be part of the process to be involved in the process. So Joanna Schwartz is the developer. She is the principal in the company that bought this piece of property on Somerset. And she and her partners are dedicated to developing this and to making it an asset, not only to the Center Business District, but also to the town of Winthrop. As everyone knows, something needs to be done around the center. The center is tired. We have a lot of vacancies down there. We have a lot of dark stores. We don't need any more development that's going to end up in vacant living space, empty stores, empty office buildings. So with that in mind, we are engaging with the town and its professional staff on a weekly basis to use whatever expertise the town has at its disposal, and also Joanna's professionals who have come on board as consultants and part of the development team. So, Joanna Schwartz, it's yours.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. It's really nice to see. I actually, at this point, recognize a lot of faces in the room, and so it's really nice to see a lot of you. And for those of you who are new to meeting me, I really appreciate all of you coming. I know that this is a very highly emotional and sensitive issue, and that's why we're here. There's a formal process for going through developments and approvals, and frankly, this should be part of the official process, and it's actually not. We have added this in because we really, as Jim said, believe that this is our project and our development, and we really want as much buy-in as we can possibly get from the community. You guys are the ones who live here. What I'd love to do for the meeting today, if this works, which I think it has worked a few other times when we've done it, what I'd like to do is take about 15-20 minutes to just talk. I think it's really important in a situation like this that we're all working from the same set of facts and with all of the context at heart. And once we're all working from that, then I will very happily, and actually that's the whole point, open it for questions and discussion and whatever else we want to go forward with tonight. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So first, I'm just going to tell you a tiny bit about me and my partners, and then I'm going to talk to you about the realities of our site that we are dealing with. Then I'm going to tell you what our proposal is as it stands and how and why we got to that point. Then we talk, okay? So as Jim mentioned, our company is called Envelo Properties. I am one of 4 principals. I'm the only one who lives in Boston, which is why, unfortunately, I'm the only one who's here this evening. The others were not able to travel in, and one is actually, unfortunately, dealing with a personal issue. In any case, we are a group of 4 who I have a real estate background. I'm a fairly new developer, but I've been in the mortgage and finance business for a large part of my career. The 2 partners out of New York, Rebecca Asher and Josh Davis, have an architecture firm, and they have been architects for 20 years out of New York. And we jointly have developments also in Rhode Island and also here. The 4th partner is from California. Her name is Andrea Johnson, and she is also just kind of a prolific entrepreneur, tech executive, and interested in getting involved in real estate. She is obviously participates from afar, but her expertise is incredibly valuable to our business model. I'm the local partner here. I recently moved about 2.5 years ago back up to Boston. My husband, I brought him here for moral support. There he is. I thought I might need it. His family, he grew up just in Natick here, so we've been in and out of the area my whole adult life. We were living in Miami for many years. We just moved back the family up here 2.5 years ago. We really wanted to raise our kids in the Northeast. So at that point, we started looking, this group of 4, for development opportunities. And we, like you, were disenchanted with a lot of the development that we saw around the city. Overbuilt, too dense, not beautiful, not thinking about the community. And so we didn't go to any of those towns. I was driving through Winthrop one day, and I literally came upon it, and I just fell in love with this seaside village, like sight unseen. I mean, I was like, this place is great. It's the best of all worlds, and if we can be part of this town, like, this is where we want to be. So we've really focused our efforts here. We felt like this is a gem that just needs a little bit of shining, you know? And at the time when we were looking, Jim McKenna was still here. The master plan of Winthrop was just going through the approval process. And so we were reading that as kind of the visionary doc of what Winthrop, which had adopted it, wanted to see for their future. And we really bought into all of it. We really loved the idea of just making Winthrop the best it could be for the next generation and beyond, and taking all the great things about it and just making them better. And part of that was adding density into the CBD. Part of that was trying to revitalize the retail in the business area and not let there be 68% of the spending of the people who live here going outside of Winthrop, but try to create some real, economic value within Winthrop for Winthrop to try to decline the population decline. Winthrop, as some of you may know, is the only seaside town in the regional area that has lost population in the last 20 years. So we really believed all that. And then we found this building and we said, great, this can be one of the projects that catalyzes this CBD and really starts to change Winthrop for the next generation. And when I say change, it's not because what's here isn't great, but what's here does need to be revitalized, it needs to be cared for, and it needs to be useful for the next generation. The site that we bought, now I'll tell you about the site. The site that we bought has been vacant for longer than anyone can remember. I've been asking, no one actually knows the exact number of years it's been vacant. We're settling on around 10. If anyone in the room actually knows the correct number of years. It's 8. It's 8, thank you, thank you. 8 years, I will use that now. And so here's the thing, we bought the building. Why has it been vacant for 8 years? Okay, there's kind of the macro issues that I just mentioned with just like the CBD and Winthrop and trying to convert things, but there's also very specific issues with this site, some of which we knew going in, some of which only became apparent as we continued our efforts in figuring out how to build this building here. One, there's a river running underneath it. We did know that in advance. However, the river, while it doesn't make it unbuildable as a site, it does present challenges that makes things a lot more expensive, and it limits options. It makes things expensive because you have to build on very developed piers as your foundation. You also can't put parking underneath, which was one of the things that we were hoping to do. You can't really even have a basement because, as someone in the back of the room knows, the basements in this area flood very, very often. So we have some challenges with our site. The building as it is, it can't be saved. Other developers have looked at it to save it, and that health center that was here, they tried to save it. If you remember, they left because they couldn't make it work. We've got this weird thing going on with the building because the building is big. It has no current use. It's been stripped. It has structural issues that we have fixed for the time being, so it is safe, but it is not a structural building that is worth saving. It also takes up so much of the footprint of the lot that there's no way to put any kind of big thing in there and have enough parking that would satisfy the needs of the community, which we know is a very big issue with the community. The other big challenge that we have with this site, and this is not just true for our site, but true for any developer in Winthrop, is that because we're so close to Boston, we're drawing from the same crowd of contractors and construction folks, and we pay Boston prices, Boston construction prices, but whatever building we build is only going to yield Winthrop level economics. And so there's a very large disconnect there, especially considering the building boom that's happened over the last 8-10 years. Construction prices have gone up, 50%. So we have all of these challenges, and then layer on top of that, we have challenges with the town and process and trying to be the first to do something different and really be the catalyst. My partnership group, we're comfortable being in that role because we really believe in what we're doing, but it does add some challenges, and it certainly does add, some stress because change is hard. Someone said to me today that I think it was David Rodriguez, I'm not sure. It was a really great thing. He said, change is hard. You need to feel like it's not happening to you, but that it's happening with you, and that you're brought along for the ride. It makes it a lot easier. And so that's what we're trying to do here. I have no delusion that we're going to come up with a building that's going to make everybody in this room 100% happy. I mean, that's just impossible. Look at our country. Look at everything. No one ever gets 100%. But our goal is to really create a building that catalyzes the CBD, that brings residents down there who are going to live, work, play right in your community, shop in your stores, eat in your restaurants, and be a catalyst for the future of Winthrop. Now, the big elephant in the room, which I promise I will talk about, is the design. I know that we're gonna get there. Okay, I'm gonna get there, and we will talk about that. But before I do, just want to explain what the proposal is right now and why. When we started doing our diligence and we uncovered all of these challenges. And you don't uncover it all on day one. It's kind of like an onion, you know, months go by and you uncover more and more challenges. We really investigated a huge number of options for this building. It wasn't so obvious from day one that this was going to be a rental apartment building. We looked at saying, I mean, originally we said, maybe we can save the building. Maybe we can turn it into some big restaurant or a brew house. No, we couldn't do that. Maybe we can build townhomes with some retail on the first floor. That didn't work. Maybe we came up with so many different options of ideas of what we could do. In the end, the only economic idea that we had that we also felt served the needs of the town was a 40-unit, 5-story building with parking that takes up the majority of the first floor. So that's what we are proposing right now. The parking addresses a big issue that we know in town. We currently, as it's envisioned, we have 34 parking spots for the 40 units. Now, I understand that there will still probably be overflow on the streets. I think that is true for any development that ever comes down into the CBD, and certainly anything that redevelops that site. There will be there will be some overflow of parking, but I think that we have mitigated that as much as humanly possible on this lot. Now, interestingly, we did that, and I think this is a point worth noting. We eliminated almost all the retail to get our 34 spots. We are now hearing from town manager's office, from other folks, that they actually want us to put the retail, some retail back into the plan. That is something that we're totally open to do. In fact, the version of the plan prior to being approved by the site plan review had an additional 1,000 square feet of retail in the front around the corner of the building. We were advised to remove it so we could get 5 more parking spots. From our perspective, that is a decision that is, we are open to either one, and we'll go with the desire of the town on that decision. So that's just an important point, and I think that's kind of reflective of our attitude, which is that we are very open to being flexible in the areas where we can be flexible. There's just certain areas where the numbers are the numbers and we just can't be flexible, and that is on the 5 stories. We ran the numbers every single way to Sunday. We have gone through every different contractor and every different construction method. It just simply doesn't work. It just, in life, I'm a very big believer that you just kind of have to understand the limitations of certain things. The numbers don't work. Construction costs are too expensive, and it just simply has to be that size. And we can talk about that, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to have a lot of questions about that, but that is actually really where the truth of it is. Now, we didn't want to add to any empty retail in the town, which is why we took it out and why we added the parking. Again, willing to do what the town desires as it relates to the retail component. I think that there's good arguments on both sides. Do we want more parking? We want more parking. Do we want to make sure that the center remains a retail first floor environment? I think that that's a valid argument too. So we are really open to that. Another kind of concern that came up as we were doing our evaluation was people were concerned about the process of construction and the noise and the disruption, etc. We were concerned about that too, and in concert with that concern and looking towards the most efficient and cost-effective development strategies, we have decided to build this building using modular construction technology. Now, I want to be very clear, that's a building methodology, it is not a design methodology. Because the building is modular, it doesn't mean that it looks the way it looks, which I know I'm guessing most of you in the room do not like. We're going to talk about that. Modular construction, however, is incredibly efficient. It is a stronger, higher quality, better value construction method. Basically, all of what they call the boxes, the modules, are built in a factory. They get trucked here on big 18-wheeler trucks, and they get put on the building almost like Lego blocks and then connected. As a result, construction time is reduced by between 4 and 6 months. So a project that would take 16, 18 months, everyone that we have spoken to on the building, architecture, GC side has said 12 months and we're in. which is incredible. So we've got the demo, we have to build the steel podium, and then these boxes go right on top of that. In addition to the speed, a lot of the noise and dust and waste and kind of the parts of construction that are the most troublesome to neighbors, that part actually all happens in the factory. So when the boxes get delivered, they get put on. Most of the other work happens inside. We clad it on site, so whatever the exterior winds up to be will happen on site, and the roof gets put on site. Obviously, there's still work that happens on site, but it is much, much more minimized than what would normally be the case. So, okay, that's kind of what we're building and why. Now, let's go to design. I think the Facebook feed was very, very clear. And truthfully, while I will admit that some of the comments stung a little bit, they were great because that's the whole point. We want to hear from you guys. Now, some of the comments said, like, why haven't they shared this sooner? Well, we weren't ready. Like, we didn't have it to share. And we wanted to make sure we started with a project that was economic. Like, we didn't want to come to you and say we want to build a brew house, and then everyone gets excited about a brew house, and then we're like, we can't build a brew house. So we wanted to come with a project that we knew worked for us, and then use that as the starting gate of how do we get it to a point where, you know, everyone, or as the largest group possible, actually likes the project. So in terms of the design, here's what I'll tell you. Winthrop, as you know, hasn't built a lot of buildings in the last 30 years. The one big project that they did build was the high school, and that was just a few years ago, and it's beautiful. Who likes the high school? Like, do people like the high school? No. So my understanding and talking around town was like people really like the high school. So it's got a very modern kind of seaside flair to it, and we had to start somewhere. So the planning board actually, I believe, has a mandate to create design standards for the CBD. However, those have not been created. So we as developers, especially as the first ones presenting projects in this area, we're kind of left to our own devices, right? So we don't have guidelines. We were kind of looking at what happened at the high school, thinking that there was some consensus around that, and we felt like a modern interpretation of that kind of similar color scheme, similar feel would work well. Now, that said, there are many versions of this exterior design that we as developers are totally okay with. As long as the economics work, and I've already talked to the architects based on some of the feedback that I've heard, and there's a lot we can do with the design that I think many of you will like better. We are totally open to that, and one of the things that I'm happy to hear tonight, if you guys want to, as part of the Q&A, is say like, hey, how about this as part of the design? Like, I'm happy to hear all that. We, however, are going to use the planning board as the arbiter of the design. That is actually one of the roles that they were set up to do, as I understand it. And there's really no other way to do like design by committee or by neighborhood, etc. What I will tell you is we have heard the comments loud and clear. I'm sure I'm going to hear a lot more tonight. That you guys want it to be a little bit more seaside, a little bit less Revere-like. That was a new one. I didn't realize the feelings about that. So we'll talk about that, and that's really where we are on the design. And I think I probably forgot some of the points that I wanted to say, but I'm sure they'll come out during the Q&A. So yeah, that was about 20 minutes. So thank you for the calmness and letting me get through that. I think now we all have kind of a level playing field, and I am open for questions. Yes.
Hi, my name is Frank Costantino, Precinct 2. My office is up the street here on Pauline Street. I put together some notes based on what I had seen. I'd like to read those this evening, if you don't mind. It was addressed to the council members and the town manager with my opinion about the development project and all of the things that you've explained, some of which are incorporated into these comments. But However, in the front page of the article last week's transcript, 2 images were shown of this intended housing project on the old CVS building, which was a First National and formerly a Woolworths. This current brick building, though boarded up, was designed to scale to fit the narrow confines of the extended Somerset Ave and provided an anchor storefront of good businesses for the tight streetscape. But the photo of this existing building, as you showed it in the paper, was taken from the opposite direction on Woodside Ave, making it appear large by comparison to the upper photo, and emphasizing the deteriorating condition of the structure, which we talked about being 8 years. Above this photo is an image of the outrageously overscaled scheme as seen from the north end of Somerset and far away from the expanded structure, which gives this newspaper image a sense of a smaller scaled complex. The view angle of the representation as shown is also depicted from an elevated horizon or a viewpoint, which diminishes the apparent height of the complex and would not accurately convey for a pedestrian a true sense of the project's impact. Given my training and practice in architecture and design and 4.5 decades of experience in working closely and intensively with world-class architects to provide design and illustrations for a huge variety of projects around the world, and having a highly developed understanding of the critical importance for points of view in explaining the scale, design features, and visual impact of a project with such drawings, I suggest that these images are far from telling a true or complete story of what this project would look like or what it's really about. The developers have dictated this narrow point of view in the paper, but have yet to publicly show town residents the actual height, bulk, depth, and aesthetically compatible design and what it would look like from Friend Square, Bartlett Road, or other abutting neighbors. The recently available set of drawings, smaller versions of what you have here, do show some of these other street and aerial views.
Yes.
The plans on the website are not contextual to the adjacent properties of the larger center, nor are they clear for most people to read or understand. Such a visible, high-profile, and impactful project needs to address numerous criteria, some of which you addressed, and these first impressions seem very wanting. The other subtle aspect of this image in the paper and on the cover sheet of your set here is that is a picturing of an auto turning in the wrong direction from Somerset Street onto a one-way street, Cottage Park Road. So from this representation, we might infer that the developers in the town are altering the zoning guidelines for the building heights, unit numbers, occupation density in the center, and that the town hall might as well allow for changing the street patterns too, which no one has talked about as far as I know.
That was a mistake. That was not intended.
To allow the development to accommodate more flowing of vehicles. So we don't know if that's just an excusal of the architect, the engineer, or the illustrator's error on that traffic direction. However, the street side and the other elevations of all sides of this structure show the town and its residents the height and bulk of this oversized project. Of course, what will be the demand on the newly installed utilities by the 60, 70, or 80 or so occupants of the project, and will it immediately strain the new infrastructure, the $4 million infrastructure that's being planned in its capacities on top of the river that runs under the center? And what about the many inconveniences of construction, which you have talked about? And what about the increased traffic on the public streets for another 34 cars, as the garage plans shown? And it also does not help your presentation, it seems to me, that this blocky design, as you mentioned, looks like a Lego structure, which I incorporated into this, and something transplanted from Revere Beach. It's also telling in these projects that on the key critical points in your set of maximum density, maximum building height, minimal yard setback, and the town's parking requirements are all listed in writing on your plans as requires relief from the zoning restrictions. Guidelines from the planning board should not be changed or altered or amended for just one project for the convenience of the developer or to the disadvantage of the larger community. How can a developer come into town change the rules of the game? In doing so, this project threatens to do, or may have done already, will mean that any zoning could be changed for any project, and hence a precedent will result in developers swarming all over this town doing what they want without any interference or objections, and lawsuits to other towns have derived from such unregulated, irresponsible process. I'm not convinced there's been a credible master plan yet of the commercial and cultural district that the center of Metcalf Square comprises, and there have been worthwhile parking and development assessment studies on the town's website. But I wonder about the early stages of this center process, which have not been made known to the public for fair review and input, and the possible prior agreements with parties now removed from Town Hall in advance the agendas of developers for this potential cost and disadvantage to many town people. And it's a most unequal arrangement. Many people are understandably disturbed by the project, and our townsfolk should have a consensus of what the center should look like, how to enhance its visual appeal, as well as the commercial and social appeal. Successes can easily be found in other towns, and you mentioned that, and they've been undertaken comparable transformations and plenty of examples to emulate. but it's the town council, the manager, and the town people in some capacity of agreement that should dictate how to achieve a comfortable, well-fitted transformation into a sensitive business district. How dense an area should be, how tall a project should be, what materials and colors, public amenities, streetscape plating, storefronts, etc. should be provided. These are aesthetic issues that are implied and should complement the design of any project. We should not overlook these issues having to do with aesthetics and scales and materials and social uses in the integration of the project. And let alone the rules bending by any party to realize their vision that clouds residents' views from which they have shown will require relief. We know that your intent as developers are maximizing return on your investment for the purchase and design cost of the building, design, legal, engineering, construction, marketing costs, after which you'll derive your profits. But much lower on the list of a lesser priority, the benefits this project might bring to their neighbors, the unique business zone that is the center in the town in general. A principal concern that is yet to be demonstrated, from what I can see, is what those benefits to the community environment this project may offer, certainly in this larger environment tonight. Or from the town council, other than the increased tax revenues, what the short and long-term advantages might be for all the concerned parties. And I suggest that the proposed benefit of increased tax revenues to the town is a financial intangible that no one really sees on the street every day. But a proposed project that might fatten the town's budget and provide a better bottom line will never offset the disturbing, unsettling, unsightly, overscale, or overdense conditions that could be created by unfettered construction. The intended or unintended results of this project are much too large not to consider more fully. The center should not be shaped in a way that only suits developers, but enhanced in deliberate ways to become an asset for the entire community. Winthrop's town officials and residents need to be more proactive as what we want our town to be. And the development of this scope, as you had mentioned, will alter Winthrop Center for decades, if not generations, to come. Collectively, we have to proceed with a full sense of civic commitment from residents and council alike that this project is worth creating in this town and in this place. I have reserved confidence in the new town manager, but remain skeptical of the diminished decision-making of only 6 members of the town council that will vote to decide the fate of the center. There are other opportunities for celebrating the arts in this project, inviting a competition or proposal for a mural on the CVS wall, for instance, depicting the narrow-gauge train, ocean scene, dock boats that occupy the yacht clubs, or the Cultural Council could help with such an arts project. A sculpture or some telling project about Michael Rizzioni celebrating the undiminished recognition of his Olympic performance would be quite relevant in a sports-minded town. Or a historic restoration of Scotty's seminal gas station canopy across the street and his facade that harkens back to the 50s. Arts are what accentuate a town and enhance that identity and can make Winthrop an attractive destination for many visitors. But no matter how the kid wants the rules change, and the biggest noise wants us to play his way, Winthrop should not be bullied into letting this project proceed. This project will stomp on the center. And the bottom line for me, this project is an ugly foot, much too big for too small and delicate a shoe. I believe the residents in our town deserves better. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I would like to address some of there was a lot in there.
I have copies of
Thank you. I would like to address some of that. The first thing that you mentioned about the rendering, yes, we did realize the car is going the wrong way. We have zero intention of switching the direction of the street. That was a drafting error by someone at the architecture firm, an unfortunate drafting error. The second point you mentioned about the presumption that there was some malintent of the pictures that we chose for the invitation. I reject that intention. That was literally, we had a good picture of that side. This was the clearest image I had. I cut and pasted them. That's really just the truth. All of the imagery that we have available to us from the architect are included in the package, as you noted, which are part of now the public record. And I do believe that there are many different angles here that show the scale, etc. Now, one thing I mentioned about the scale, I think the fact that you mentioned a few things which said that there's no plan for the center and there's uncertainty about the plan for the center. I mean, the master plan has been adopted by the town. It was adopted a year and a half ago. And that is, whether or not it all happens or not, or whether or not there's funding for all of the initiatives in there, that is the blueprint for the town as it is today. You guys might not like it, and we kind of stepped into this because I know that there was a lot of discontent about the process of the master plan. And that's not really what I'm here to talk about. Now, in fact, David Rodriguez, is David still here?
Yes.
David is the new, if many of you probably haven't met him yet, he's the new assistant town manager who started only 3 weeks ago. There he is. So if there's any questions related to, the official, like what the town plan is and what the rules are, I'm going to defer those questions to David. But as far as there being a plan for the center, there is new zoning and there is an objective that the center will grow and expand. I contend to you that this project looks particularly out of scale, to use the language, because we are first and it is being overlaid under buildings that are still one story. I know that there are several other projects in discussion and possibly coming down the pike just after ours that will, over time, the CBD will look more, it will be built up. And that's not me, that's the town of Winthrop's planning board and the master plan of Winthrop has already approved that. Now,
It's a suggestion.
the master plan
Doesn't say
was.
to have 5-story buildings.
No, the master, so
Does not say that.
there was you're correct, you are accurate
And my
and correct.
question to you is, you said we have to make it 5 stories.
So-
Why are we here then? I mean,
So-
I thought this was.
How about you raise your hand and wave like other people do?
So let me just finish my thought there and then I will address your issues. So here's the thing, and guys, can we all agree that the current status quo really can't stay the way it is? Can we at least, there's got to be some common ground. Let's find some common ground. Can we all agree that this decrepit, empty eyesore can't stay like that? Okay, so here we are, we're trying to figure out a building that works. We are the developers, the way this works, we're the developers, but we still have to go and get financing for this project. There's going to be other investors on the equity side, there's going to be debt. If the project doesn't pencil out, there's no money for the project. It's that becomes, unfortunately, it becomes a math problem. It's nothing more than that. Now, you're right that we are asking for zoning relief in a few areas. The parking as the CBD is currently set up, it's not so much zoning, we are 1 car short of what is required. You brought up a few other things that reminded me of some points about the building that I didn't mention. I don't think they're going to compensate for all of your concerns, but I do think that they're important. Few things about the scale of the building that we did that you can't really see on here that will help a lot. One thing we did, the whole building is set back 3 feet off of Somerset Ave, and so you have the existing sidewalk. We set the building back an existing 3 feet, and we will match the sidewalk scape and add benches. And there's one of the pictures in here shows that. This line here is kind of the additional part of the sidewalk. So it's going to add to the sidewalks. We also have a lot of cutouts in the building in different places to eliminate the height. And in the front, it's set back. In the front, it's set back. We have a patio on the 2nd floor that looks out over Somerset to be kind of have community interaction. On the back floor, on the back of the building, there's a green deck that anyone who's looking back over the building from above on Cottage Park can see. So there are definitely things that we did to try to, and that's why it also has that boxy scale, because we're trying to set things back so that it doesn't look like one larger building in your CBD. There is no hiding that we are asking for a variance in order for this project to be approved. That is accurate. When you say, why are you here? My goal is to share the information as I have it today. And I also want to put a caveat out there, and I think this is important, is that I am here tonight telling you everything that I know to be true and accurate and current as of today. And my intent is to be as candid and open as I possibly can. I just really want to put it out there. If something changes as we go through this process, that is a natural process of things that happen, and that doesn't mean that there's any malintent. Why? We're going to keep you guys as informed as we can. I have a sign-up sheet that's going around the room. And I will start sending updates on if there's another meeting or if there's another anything. I will send that to whoever signs up on that list. Who has the sign-in sheet? Did it get?
It's out here.
Oh, okay. So, it's optional. You don't have to do it. But if you guys want to be informed as things change, as I'm informing people, please sign that. That will be your best, one of the ways. I'm learning in Winthrop, communication's a challenge. We're trying to mitigate that as much as we can. Okay, we're going to finish you, and then we'll go to the back.
It's the height. The ground part's beautiful. It's the height. It's too tall for the town. And why I got upset is because you said, why do I want this decrepit? Well, to me, that's not a good way to come into a town. At least say, I see this building has potential. You actually, that just floored me that you would call the area decrepit, that you want to come in and invest in this area.
So this is where
But
words.
it's the height. I don't care about that.
Let me
It's the
explain
height.
my choice of words, and I apologize if that's
Yes.
offensive. I did mention I fell in love with this town, and I love it for
I
all of
heard
its
all that.
scars and its work. This particular building, I didn't say the downtown was this particular building.
matter, it's the
It's stripped. It is not structurally sound, and I will tell you. And one of the other reasons we looked at some point when the health center was looking at this project, they somehow were able to get some tax credits related to trying to save the building. When we uncovered that, we were very excited. We were like, oh my gosh, this could be our
That's a
ticket.
service for people, so they can get tax
So,
credits.
well-
Yours is not. Yours is a
No,
profit.
no, but at this point, well, that was at that point, we were still trying to figure out, can we save the building, and if we can, what would go there? The challenge was, it wasn't even that. The challenge was that in order for the tax credit to be valid, you couldn't change anything. And that included structural issues that needed to be fixed. It included windows and doors. So it was not a possibility, which is why the health center didn't use the credits that they were granted. So, as it relates to the height, the other thing I will tell you, we've done a shadow study. It's in there. The building is set up in a way where fortunately, where the sun actually rolls over Somerset and the street. It doesn't roll over Cottage Park and the back. It just doesn't. It's not an impact. And you can look at the shadow study. I also then just had the architect do a shadow study on a building that's 35 feet. They look almost identical.
Can you put on the shadow study?
Sure.
sheet?
Absolutely.
I don't know if anybody's looked at the smaller plans, in the 1117 version of these sheets at the town clerk's office in color, and then there are 8.5 by 11 sheets of that same document at 8.5 by 11 in black and white. So you really can't see the shaded shadow clearly on the black and white copy.
Anyone who wants it, if you need color, if anyone wants, you're more than welcome to just take a picture of this, with your phones if you'd like that. But this is a fairly standard kind of evaluation of light impact on new development, and it's done using 3 times of day and three times of year to show what types of shadows would be drawn by the building. And so like in the summer when the sun is really high, I don't know if any of you can see this back there, but like this darker gray is what's indicative of a shadow. And so what you can see is like in the summer, there's virtually no shadow anywhere because the sun is so high, and that's just the way it rolls. As you get into the fall and the spring, there's a little bit more, but you can also see that the way the sun is, the shadow really rolls over Somerset and not so much onto any of the abutting buildings. Now, in winter, where the sun is so low and there are shadows everywhere very often, there is more. But again, they're all headed this way, and in fact, the shadows that you see over some of these other buildings are caused by abutting buildings and not necessarily our building. I did the same thing. What I wanted to see from this was, well, if in some miracle of a world we were able to create a building that was economically viable, that was 35 feet tall, which is by, you know, the worst interpretation of the zoning code, what we are permitted to build, what do these look like? I have a small printout here. They look, and you can look at it later if you want. It looks very, very similar.
Thank you.
Let's keep it, guys, as Jim said earlier, if we could keep it to 3 minutes.
My name's Jack Dowd, Winthrop resident for 60 years. In a recent map done by Woodward and Curran, created by the town of Winthrop in March of 2018, it shows that most of the area in the center is floodland, marshland and floodland. When you're building in a floodland, you're going to displace water on a new development. That water is going someplace else. That water is going to someone's home or someone else's business. You raised that issue, so I thought I'd enhance it. Because it's in this flood zone, you have to do a lot of pile driving or below-grade stabilization of the earth, and that's very costly and disturbing to the neighborhood. I pulled up your website, Envello Properties, and it says about us. Envello is a residential and commercial development company. It was established in the year 2016, or shortly before we became interested
Yes,
in this property at the Local Center.
that is correct.
One of the things about us says in your website is every detail is deliberate, from the material of the roofing to the pillows that sit on the living room sofa. It's very interesting, but I think a lot of people are concerned about other matters.
That
A lot of
website,
people here have their life investment in the center, business or their houses.
sure.
I know you'd like to make an investment in the town. I was concerned about how much money you have invested in this property.
Is that a question?
Yes.
It's public record that the property was purchased for $1.2 million. That is part of the tax record.
Okay.
I will also just clarify, the website that you're looking at our corporate entity is called Envello Properties. The website is Envello Homes. My partners their background is in residential, and we have the developments in Rhode Island are what's reflective of that.
Another thing on your website, Envello's first commercial project is underway. We are excited, first commercial project. We are excited to adapt our design-driven approach to this venture.
Yes.
Is that this venture?
That is this venture.
Okay, so it's your first development, commercial development?
It's our first multifamily development, yes.
Thank
Now,
you.
I have another.
I have other things to say.
Yeah, okay.
You mentioned the sale price of the building was $1.2 million.
Yes.
And that's up to date. I have material here that says the mortgage is held by CRZB
Yes.
LLC.
Mm-hmm.
And that is
That was the seller.
That's the previous
Yes.
owner of the building.
Mm-hmm.
And he's holding $900,000.
That is correct.
So do you have $1.2 million invested in this?
We purchased the property for $1.2 million. There is
But
that
he-
mortgage.
But he is holding the mortgage.
He is still holding the mortgage, and we have also invested a substantial amount of money in design, architecture, research, civil engineering, structural engineering, landscape architecture, shoring up the building that was structurally unsound. We have invested a significant amount of money in this town so far. I will also tell you
I would
about
have to say that it's not as much money as people in this room have invested in this town. Thank you.
Okay, I will, what's that? Okay, green shirt. Hi. Hi,
First of all, I'd like to thank you for wanting to invest in this town.
thank you.
I don't have an issue with the height, which is gonna make a lot of people hate me, but, well, anyway, I understand the economy of scale of what's needed to build it. I've recently been in the Southwest, Denver, New Mexico. This kind of architecture is going up everywhere. I might have been one of the comments that stung. I said it was generic, cheesy architecture. Design is what I should have said, not the architecture. And I've seen this design used, the architecture used beautifully with different cladding, brick, dark greens, stuff that blends into the you know, the local geography. It's depending on where it is. It can look, and everybody thinks Revere because those ones in Revere are hideous. Everything's like orange, brown, black, weird blue. So that's what people think when they saw that picture.
Yeah, and can I also just qualify, like, this picture is just like a bad printout of color. And you know what happens when you look at something a long time and you get used to it? The truth is, this orange, it's not orange, it's wood. It's natural wood, like, and we've seen samples of it at the architecture, and it's really actually quite pretty. I'm okay, we can change it, but my point is, it's not what looks like this ugly orange, and the blue is not really that blue. Like, so the rendering is an unfortunate exaggeration of what it would look like, but your point is very well taken, and we are, like I said, we are really 100% open to that.
No,
we really are.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
And like I said, I'm really happy you're investing in this town. But really, my only concern is just keeping that eye towards blending it in.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Jim, you want to pick the people?
No, I'm just watching who's having the most.
Here, we'll go to the back of the
I have a really quick
yeah.
comment. Mine's going to be super
Yeah.
quick. I'm Julia Wallers. I'm the chair of the Transportation Committee here, and I know a lot of the concerns people have around this development and development in general is the influx of cars and congestion and parking overflow. So I'm just wondering if you've given any consideration to things like secure bike parking inside.
Thank you. I forgot to
card
mention.
subsidy.
Yes. Oh my God. Thank
car
you.
parking, transportation vending.
Yes.
Give people options so that maybe you have a car, but maybe you don't. And if you have one, maybe you don't need to drive it every day.
Thank you, because I totally forgot that point, and I really appreciate it. So yes, we gave that a lot of thought.
And thank you for investing in Winthrop.
Thank you. So we do have plans in the garage for a zip car spot to be right there, which would be allowed to be used by anyone in the neighborhood. So if someone doesn't have a car, they don't necessarily have to have one. Part of the design also is we put a very large bike room in the very front of the building with front door access to the building. That's very unusual. Mostly bike rooms are stuck in the back or they're in the basement. They really discourage day-to-day bike riding. So yes, you can't bike ride 12 months a year, but you can bike ride 8 or 9. And we have this big bike room up there. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it could serve, you know, a few dozen bikes right in the front of the building. And literally the front door, this is the front lobby of the building, and then this is the bike room.
Awesome.
So we really did consider that. Another thing with the parking, I know people had some concerns that had been raised about, well, they'll put this big parking garage, but then they're going to charge so much for parking that everyone's going to park on the street. That is not the plan at all. The plan is that the parking garage is free. We will let residents pay to reserve a spot in the garage, and so then that means that they will always have a spot, and they will pay for that right. And if you don't pay, if there's an open spot in the garage, you will be allowed to use it.
Okay, parking. That's a big issue, and that's a big issue for us as neighbors. In this neighborhood,
I understand.
we get people parking at our house all the time. 34, you think they're going to have one car? No, they're going to have more than one car. Right. They're going to have friends coming in. They're going to be, there's no place to park in the center right now. There's no, the traffic in the center is disgusting. You can't move. I watch car after car after car and almost been hit by cars driving up my street, barreling up the street. There is no place to park. People are parking in front of my house because there's no place to park in the center. And you want to bring more in?
So
That's not enough parking.
I will tell you, by the zoning rules of the CBD.
That's not enough.
But so we're all trying to work within the rules of what we have. Within the zoning rules of the CBD right now, the development as proposed.
Too many units.
The development as proposed requires 35. We currently have 34. Where, you know, there's limits. There's only a certain amount of size on the
The
lot.
Winthrop Center is too small for this kind of project.
That's right.
First of all, I want to thank you for holding the meeting. I think it's
Thank
to
you,
get the
Tom.
information
Thank
out
you, nice
there.
to see you.
Even coming when you can expect some less than, less than favorable comments and so forth.
Yes.
So coming here tonight, I think is something we should appreciate, and thank you for doing that. However, my wife and I own a house 2 doors away from this building. Be sure we preface that. I have a number of concerns, but I think there's a number of problems. First of all, the area is zoned for 2.5 stories. We were told by members of the planning board, and there's a whole history of the adoption of the zoning, which I don't really want to get into, but a lot of the neighbors feel they were not consulted appropriately during the adoption of that new center zone. However, that section is zoned for 2.5 stories. We were told by members of the planning board at a meeting that the rest of the center is zoned for 4 stories. There was a deliberate exemption for properties that are adjacent to residential districts to lessen the impact of the proposed development on those people who lived adjacent to the property. So we've got a 2.5 story limit at the end, which was in place when you bought the property, by the way. So, but you've talked about parking, so I've got a number of comments. I think most of them I'll save and address to the forums when we go forward with the planning board and the Board of Appeals. But what is your expectation for where the overflow of parking would be? You know that there's going to be more cars than 34 in the property. Where would those cars go if not on an already congested Cottage Park Road and Somerset Ave?
I mean, listen, I think we have optimized parking on the site to the best of our ability, and I think that there will be overflow. And as I said before, I think it's unrealistic to think that any development happens in the CBD where there isn't traffic and parking some sort of an impact. That's just reality because the buildings take up the whole lot. If anything gets redeveloped in a building, there's going to be some more cars. Now, I know the town is working on some parking management and mitigation issues. I do think that the overflow for our building will be, and I know this might not help your situation because I know you live so close, but I think the overflow will be much more significantly an overnight thing than a daytime thing, right? Because a lot of those cars will leave during the day. But we all are kind of dealing with the cards that were dealt, and within the confines of our site, we have absolutely maximized what we can possibly do with the parking situation. Joe.
Hi, thank you for being very clear on the money side, what you need to make for this project to work. I mean, you couldn't have been clearer about that. Anybody who doesn't know me, my name's Joe Quigley. I'm a 15-year resident on Cottage Park Road, so I'm fairly new to the area. So my question is to you. You stated this needs to be the 5 stories for you to make it work, math, money. If you don't get that, what will happen to the site?
I mean, that's a really good and unfortunate question. I mean, listen, we're here and we want to make this work, and I am not really thinking about an option that doesn't work. However, if we can't raise the money and bring in the partners that are required in order to get the job done, the property sits the way it sits, we sell it at a loss, and you guys pray someone else will somehow come into town and try to do something. I don't know, that's kind of just the reality of what, sadly, I think would happen. That's my candid answer. Jean.
Hi, Jean Coughlin, everyone who doesn't know me, or if you do know me, hello again. Anyway, I'm a frequent flyer to these meetings. I think I've been coming and feel like I stalk the town council and the planning board. But anyway, I need to because I've lived in the community for over 33 years. And I'm going to start just by saying the first word, and I've been preaching it for over 2 years. Communication. That's what's got this thing, this mess on our hands. It's been lack of communication, not telling people when things have been done.
Just to be clear, you're talking about the town.
I'm talking about the town.
I just want to be clear about that.
The reason that I'm saying the communication is because you also dealt with people in the town that didn't give you good communication.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm going back 3 town managers ago.
Yes.
James McKenna. Okay, there's where your problem started. If you listened to him and he told you you could build it, that the residents would be okay, no one ever talked to us. Okay, we're not okay.
It was never going to be okay.
It was never gonna be okay, and so I also feel a little bit bad that you went ahead and did plans before talking to people, because I think you would have gotten a clue and said, God, these people don't want a 5-story building. Let me talk and get the feel and communicate with these people that have lived here and live here still, before I develop or purchase or I have purchased, but let me know what to do. So I do have the ordinances here, and I'll just briefly read to you the first paragraph of the Code of Ordinances in the town of Winthrop. The purpose of the chapter is to promote development in the downtown Winthrop by encouraging redevelopment, which is a good thing, and we thank you for that. Reuse or renovation of properties in a manner, and I underline it, compatible with community character. So I don't think that's compatible at all. And you saw where I live, I saw you today. I have that little house that is going to be blocked by all the light. I do live in a place, and
I want to review it with you. I think
come on over.
Yeah,
I want to show you my sunny room.
No, but I was actually specifically looking at your house,
My house too.
and I really think it's going to be okay. But we'll go over it.
I'm not going to be okay.
No, from the light perspective, that specific issue.
And you,
Yeah.
and you know where I live, you know where my
Yeah.
house is, so you know that 5-story building is gonna overshadow my house.
Everything goes the other way. All the shadows go the other way. They don't go to your
No,
house.
they don't come our way, I'll tell you, it's gonna be blocked. I look out my bedroom window, I know what I'm gonna see, and I know in my living room how the light hits, and I know it's gonna be gone. So I'm gonna welcome you over.
Both of you,
The other
I
thing-
think I'm happy to sit separately and we can go over that in
Yep.
detail.
So it also says to manage parking requirements to foster downtown development, to achieve a more streamlined review, including guidance for design and site plan. I'm gonna stop right here and I'm gonna say, I'm asking the town officials and the people we elected, some of them I see tonight in the room, thank you for coming. I will say that today, on the front page of the Winthrop Transcript, if no one's seen it, we have a really nice front page, finally something, actually really nice from Ron Vecchia, telling us it's gonna be okay, people, we're gonna talk through this. This is all we've been asking for. The other one I have for you, and for Mr. Cipollero, I brought 2 copies of the East Boston Times, because they're the same situation. And they just, this week's paper, the residents on Saratoga Street, the Harbor View Neighborhood Association got together because they were trying to do a 5-story building. People were upset with it. They came out with a really nice situation. I brought it for you, the plans are here, and they are going to a 3-story with 40 units and parking, more parking for the people. So they want it, I brought it for you, and I brought it with Mr. Cipollero.
Thank you.
The next thing I just wanted to just tell you real briefly is this project is going to be the biggest project Winthrop does, and the most crucial that we get it right. Okay, so I'm begging the people that we voted for and put in there to abstain the law. I live next to it. I have gone over and over, and I have the attorney that from KP Law that gave me the answer. I have the building inspector. It's 35 feet, 2.5 stories. I live next to these buildings. I know once one goes in, more are gonna follow. So it's so important we get this right and we do it right the first time, that everybody that follows suit is also gonna do it right. So this is a model, Joanna, I will tell you.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I want to actually bring up. One thing I want to bring up, and this is really, really important communication-wise. You are 100% correct that this is a model. We are the first. We are out front. As a result of that, as you know, part of the plan, these were filed to go in front of the planning board on Monday. We jointly, along with the town manager's office this morning, decided to continue that until the January meeting.
So it won't be this Monday?
It will not. And the reason
So
for
that's
that, the reason for that primarily is, as the lead project, there are many procedural issues that have arisen that that transcend our project. It's just they're related to our project because we are first. And we jointly decided it was best for the planning board and everyone else who is required to be part of that to manage and handle those process issues in advance so that when we and anyone else get to the process, it is very,
So
very
that's good.
clear.
You decided that today. So today's Thursday. Town hall's closed tomorrow. They post the agenda for today, and I looked, it's there. So no one knows that that isn't gonna happen on Monday. So
So,
the communication, again, I got the town manager's newsletter today, it's on there. So communication is so crossed and so wrong. And I'm gonna give you these papers, because I really want you to look at this newsletter.
so, you know, what's that? We're planning to continue the discussion, that's for the planning board for the January meeting, that is the current plan. Does the town manager, do you know the date of the January planning board meeting? Does anybody know?
Is it the third Monday?
Is it the third?
Usually.
Okay, apparently it's usually the third Monday.
Third in January.
Assistant town manager.
Martin Luther King Day.
Yeah. That-
Okay, so then it won't be that day.
No, here's what we're planning to do, is this has already been applied for, it's been noticed, it's been advertised, and so I need to, on behalf of the applicant, send a letter requesting a continuance. And I know town hall's closed tomorrow, but the town, I did communicate that with the chair of the planning board. He will be receiving it tonight.
When will they tell people?
It's going up on the town website.
We have to tell the town clerk.
Oh, she knows that too, yeah. Everybody's getting it. Everybody's going to get
But
it.
maybe Larissa can do a Facebook post for it.
Yeah.
So this is all I mean, Jim.
Right.
This
Yeah.
communication
Well,
needs to be a lot
in
better.
our effort to keep the communication loop going, we went to town hall. And we needed some further information because there are some procedural aspects. Tom and I talked about them last week when we had a chance to speak. And I wanted to run some of those past the administration because it is the first major project in the CBD that's coming online. I know there's some question about the maps, there's questions about the
Lines around houses.
the zone, what CBD and what's up. That all needs to be squared away ahead of time. We don't want to get there and argue that when we're going through our project. Town needs to get that under control. We're going to let them do that. Whether we go in January or we go in February, whenever we go, we want to make sure of a number of things. One, it's legally correct.
Right.
Two, everybody knows what the ground rules are and what the playing field is. And three, that when we have the public hearing, it's going to be on the merits of the project, not what maybe Mr. McKenna said, or what a prior planning board did, or whether the map was adopted. We don't want to even discuss that, because that takes away from all of that give and take that's part of the process in a public hearing. We don't want to debate 2 years ago. When we walk in, we want to know what we're subject to. We want to know the criteria, and we want to be able to legally meet that, because if we don't, and something goes awry, whether it's a vote one way or the other, it's going to end up in court because the process was tainted. So nobody wants that, and so that's going up on the town website.
So
And
what I just want to say to you is, this is why I'm asking for communication.
Right.
Those things need to be cleared up before people come with plans that cost a lot of money to do, okay?
Believe me.
If you
Yeah.
straighten that stuff out first, don't you think that it's better then to do the plans, once you know what the zoning
well,
is?
it would be, but here's
But we thought we, but you know that we,
There you
right, so
go.
we thought we knew.
It's
So
the,
we-
you know, who told who what,
I
and
mean-
it's not the way it is. I'm talking about legal
I
documents.
understand, and we're, we are kind of rambling through this in the same way, and so,
And we are too.
and that was why it became very clear today as part of some of these discussions. I'm like, everything that was being discussed had nothing to do with my project and had everything to do with the town. That's a, like, you guys got to figure that out, and then we can talk, and then we can talk, and then we can talk about the project. Yes, sir, in the front.
I just want to reinforce what Attorney Cipolletta said, our zoning map is 1987. That's the last one that was adopted. Lines mysteriously shifted. The 2007 is a nice drawing. You have a right to know what the boundaries are. Then you can begin to interpret the zone. By the way, you've been very straightforward, ma'am, but
Thank you.
I would like to, because there were some things you said, and we've all got to have the same respect.
Yes.
The population of Winthrop's been steady at about 18,000 since 1990. There was an error that the town should have appealed in 2010 when we dropped slightly below it. The latest community survey has us at 18,300.
So that's interesting. I'm just going to ask you, because I actually was on your website, the Winthrop website today, and I took the numbers.
You took it out of something that misrepresented the town a couple years ago and should have been repudiated.
So that's challenging for someone coming in, because I literally took it from the town website, and what it said, I wonder if I still have it up. I don't have service in here. I do. I still have it up. Let's see if it'll go. What I am reading, what I took that stat from was what is on the town website called the Final Strategic Plan 11-14-14, and it had population data that ended in, not sure if the population data ended in 2014 or 2010.
It began in 1980 and compared us to 1980. Trust me, let's go to the census. And I had this.
If I misquoted something from this document, I stand corrected.
The document was making an argument that this town was in bad economic shape and that this town was going downhill and we needed to stimulate development. It may have been appropriate for that time to get people's attention. I think that time's long past. The second thing is we have plenty of development right now. We've got, our revenues are going up. They're going to continue to go up. We've got more proposals. I see construction all over town. What we really have is, and that's the baseline we're coming on. Let me say one thing. I think you're going to perhaps have to have an additional variance from the board, or at least a conditional use on the parking on the first floor. Our zoning is very clear. It's mixed use. A parking garage is not a mixed use.
This is why, so there is a little bit of commercial, but this was why, I'm not sure if I was talking
It doesn't
fast.
allow a parking garage.
So this is why, if you see here, the plan version that we had right before this plan actually had retail in this. This is the parking garage floor plan here, and it had retail along the, going all the way to the corner. It has this small retail space, the lobby, the bike room, and then it had retail. As I mentioned earlier, under recommendation, from the groups that we were talking to, they said, let's optimize parking, get rid of as much retail as you can get. What we did in the final version that we wound up submitting was we got rid of that 1,000 square feet of retail on the front, and we added 5 tandem spots that we intended would be for the, the 2-bedroom units. As I mentioned earlier, this is an area where we can absolutely be flexible and are very comfortable adding back that retail space again, if that's something that the town is looking for.
Let me say, you're putting the onus here. Your rationale comes from talking to a group, not a zoning administrator, not a planner.
This was part of the site plan review process.
Let me say this, will you please? I would say that I would challenge you in court on that. And there's some experience in zoning.
If we put the retail back, you would challenge us in court?
No, if you don't.
Oh, okay, so.
And
Thank
if
you.
you don't, then you need at least a conditional use. The second thing I would say is you're putting the onus on the town to solve your parking problem. You have an option. You indicated that there's not a river going under there. It's not the Charles River. It's a stream. It's a wetland. It's in a bowl. Everything goes downhill. I had some criticism about how you're handling the water on the site, but I'm not going to go into that tonight. You can put parking underground there.
It costs $100,000 a
It's
spot.
going to cost you
$100,000 a spot.
parking costs, or you can put it on the roof. You don't
How do
need-
they get up to the roof?
You put an elevator in this.
A building in Miami did that, and an elevator broke, and people had to move out of the buildings, and their cars were stuck in the building for months. It was a giant building. Oh my God, what a disaster! I would never build a building like that. No.
I
Thank you.
know places in Boston.
I know it happens.
And
I honestly,
there-
it would
there
stress
were-
me out so much. I would never.
There was and still is a very successful parking garage on Newberry Street.
Yes.
They're using such small area because you don't like it. It doesn't-
No, I don't think it's economically viable. I mean, how much does a car elevator cost and parking? I don't think that is a viable solution. But thank you for your comment. I'm gonna.
No, I want to ask, here's my question.
Yes. We just have a few more in the interest
No,
of time.
you extended that.
Yes.
Why is this a responsible project and responsible proposal from both the point of view of the town?
Okay. I'm gonna answer this I'm gonna give 10-second answer, and then we're gonna go to white sweater in the back, and then we're gonna go to them. Okay, and then we're gonna go to you. So, I think my whole 20-minute kind of introduction kind of gave a good sense of why I think it is a responsible development. I really believe that adding in residents into this town, revitalizing what is in the CBD, bringing some additional revenue into the town, and being a catalyst for the next generation of folks who are going to live, love, play, learn, and enjoy Winthrop. That is why I believe it is responsible. Woman in the white sweater in the back. Thank you.
I just want to confirm, maybe I've missed a few meetings, this is a rental property.
Yes,
Not
it is.
homeownership.
It is a rental property positioned in the middle of the market. It is not affordable. It is not Section 8. It is not government subsidized. It is also not super high luxury. We wanted to make it attainable for the folks who actually live here. It will be obviously on the high end of that because it is a new and beautiful building, but it is kind of like the Goldilocks in the middle of the road structure.
So this will be a little redundant in what you just said, but I want to be sure that I understand. So you don't expect to have any federal or state subsidy?
No.
In the financing of this property?
That is not the intent of
You
this
are
moment.
not, you don't have any percentage of these 40 units that are targeted at some level of affordability, like 40% of area median or 50% of area
No.
median? No income restrictions, no rent restrictions?
As of right now, no.
As of
That
right
is-
now?
No, that is not the intent, that is absolutely not the plan, and Winthrop does not have a requirement. Many towns around here have that requirement. Winthrop does not have the requirement, I understand, because
It's already met.
it's met elsewhere, correct. So that is not our intent at all, no. Yes,
Well, he's been standing up for all the time.
okay. Yes, please, thank you.
My name is Richard Diamond. I've been involved in this town for about 45 years. On the planning board, on the government. I was chairman of the planning board when we did the hospital. I was chairman of the planning board when we did the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center. He was going to go right into the same spot we talked about. And I was also chairman of the board and about every other multi-dwelling apartment that was built back in the 60s. Because at that time, Fort Banks was kind of surplus. We had to develop some of the areas of town into what we thought at the time maybe multi-dwelling would work. But when we did, we spread it out through the town, and the buildings were not 5-6 stories high. They were all put in the buildings that at one time were vacant, and they're used now, and our way of thinking was a better use than what was there. Now, what's interesting about the town, the Senate district, if you research way back in 1924, all the buildings that were ever built in the center were only 1 or 1.5 story high. The area in question was it did not fit well for going way up, so they never did. Now, the project you have under development, trying to get East Boston Neighborhood Health Center came in, they took that building, and they had made a design of 1 story, beautiful complex, completely done. And for some reason, we do not know to this day, at least I don't.
The economics didn't work, they couldn't have the parking and the building.
There's no question of parking, no nothing at the time, except he did tell me down in the back it needed a few more, and to move around, talk to some of the banks who had space available. But that building was in perfect shape and ready to go, but for some reason it ended up where it is now today. But why I bring this all up is that what you are developing or trying to develop into an area, this town was never adapted for this type of building. They say no one is coming in, yet you can drive through the center of a Friday night. And if you can find a parking space, you are going to be lucky because the restaurants are completely loaded. Now, if that isn't exciting to bring in comment into this town, what is? You're going to bring in something that a lot of people are not going to like at all. We are now slowly developing a good backlog of restaurants, of good restaurants, and people are coming in.
And we want them to
and
succeed.
we are starting to get a But I don't like anybody saying that the town center is dead. You
I
can't
didn't
be
say
dead
that. I didn't
when
say
you
that.
go through the center on Friday night and you'll be lucky to get through. So what I am saying, quite frankly, is your type of development down in the Winthrop Center is not needed. And I don't think it should be. And I think that whatever you try to develop is never going to work out well. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments. We'll have a, yes.
Hi, I want to thank you.
I know, I said I was going across the room, ma'am. We're gonna get to everyone. I'm not going anywhere. I am here. I will answer every question. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you for this informative meeting and for investing in our town. And I'm not adjacent to this building. I do get the people's concerns, okay? But I hope a compromise can be made because Winthrop needs the revenue. We have an empty school that we're paying for that has not been sold or developed. We have Muffin Town, all of it. We have empty buildings everywhere. The people are going to want to develop, and the town could use the revenue. We could use the revenue for our schools. Maybe we could even pay our teachers higher. I feel we need to move ahead. I'm sorry, I probably get tarred and feathered when I leave, but
thank you.
No,
Thank you.
But that's my take on it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, sir, in the blue.
I want to thank you for having the courage to stand up in front of the whole town here.
Thank you.
I truly believe that the real truth is not coming out here. There were reasons that people like Mr. Dimes and other people who have served this town for the last 60 years had ordinances in place at Winthrop Center. Now, those ordinances were changed without any public input, any residential input, okay? And you have nothing to do with this, okay? This happened in 2014. Our precinct representative at that time, councilor, had an ethical obligation, because it's in the charter, to inform his constituents that all the ordinances are going to change and they're going to have a dramatic effect and impact on everybody's life. Okay? What we're talking about here is not just your project.
Yes.
What we're talking about now is, this is not the CBD, Center Business District. This is turning into the Center Residential District. Okay?
No business.
As Mrs. Coughlin said in the charter, none of this is in the character of the center. So what we need to do is come to some type of agreement here, because obviously you said, well, you know what? I may have to work at 35 feet. You may have to. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I will tell you this. I'm a resident.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm like everybody else in this room. I struggle to pay my mortgage. I struggle to pay my taxes, okay? I live 3 houses up. I grew up on that street. I've been there 50 years, okay? There is no parking on Somerset Ave. On Cottage Park Road, you can only park on one side because a fire engine couldn't get down there. We go to Bartlett Road, those people are impacted, Mrs. Bagels, the Mahoney's, everybody else, all day. We go to Woodside Ave, the Viscos, the Hugheses, they've been living with people in front of their house, they can't even park in front of their house. We have a traffic problem. 20 years ago, Dunkin' Donuts was not allowed to come in this town because the traffic was too high. Now what we're doing now is we're going against, really, any type of safeguards for the neighborhood. There's no safeguard at all. The developers got every single advantage. We, as longtime residents, got no advantage. You got the parking moved from 2 to 0.75. You got the height restriction moved. You have a $2,000, the developer can buy a spot, but the resident can't buy a spot? That makes no sense to me. There were lines drawn around people's homes. We know if those maps are accurate or not. The bottom line is this. This was a terrible mistake that you walked into. You really did. And you had no control of it. And people did not have any type of impact at all. The residents had no type of impact at all. As a matter of fact, the residents put together a proposal that's online, that's on the town website, citing their concerns about quality of life. 2 years for the infrastructure, then your project, then the next project. You're talking 10 years of disruption. I don't even know if the ground can hold it down there, okay? This is a very serious matter. This is a complete transformation of a beautiful, tranquil New England center.
Right.
So what's going to happen here is going to be, it's not going to go easy for anybody. I truly feel that you are a very honest person, you're an erudite person. I really believe that. However, you have come into a situation now where the people of this town, unfortunately, were totally misrepresented.
I want to just say one thing, and thank you for those comments, because we had talked about those, because we're all on the same hornet's nest, okay?
No, not as much as
No, not as much. Some are impacted obviously more.
I was put down for mixed use and I was never told.
I understand. So here's I want to wrap this up, but what I would like to suggest is after the holidays, if you would be willing to come out again and continue the conversation, and maybe would move this down to the senior center, where there's maybe a little more room.
And let's have the town manager there as well.
Really. And phase on.
Okay. All right, so I'll find a larger room.
I will stay and answer, I will stay up here, I think it's been an hour and a half. Yes, ma'am.
Just one quick question.
But I just wanted to get that.
Yes.
I just wanted to get that. I want to keep this going in whatever direction it goes. We're going with it. So maybe after the holidays, we'll find out, and we'll get out the location, and we'll figure out the time.
Yes, ma'am, and then ma'am, and then.
Earlier you stated that there are new zoning laws. Could you explain that to me?
I'm referring to the zoning laws that everyone in the room is referring to. The zoning laws, the zoning changes that created the CBD zoning, which is that 0.75 parking, which is the 2.5 and the 4 stories, depending on the location in the CBD. That happened in, what, sir, do you know, 2014? So maybe the word new is maybe a little bit of a misnomer. That's what I'm referring to. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Judy Thorno. Hi. I'm the chairman of Winthrop Historical Commission.
Nice to meet you.
And I want to clarify a couple of things you said. The reason the high school, I was also on the committee when the high school and middle school built. The reason that school looks so lauded is because of where it was located. And the committee voted for that type of architect. It was not because the town wanted something ultra modern. It was chosen because of its location, and it kept the same basic footprint. So let's clarify that. It was not the planning board picked that type of structure.
Thank you for that.
The Arthur T. Cummings School, if you look at the Arthur T. Cummings School.
Which one is that? Sorry.
There's right
next
door.
door. Okay, thank you.
The reason the Arthur T. Cummings School looks the way it is on Pauline Street is it matches the facade of the E.B. Newton School, because this building is on the historic register. And we made it purposely to insist that the architect of that building match this building. The reason why the people in this room want the center to remain the way it looks is so that it would match the decor of the center. A building such as yours, whether the town likes it or not, should be something historic because the town was historic. The French Square is historic. They have historic plaques down there. There's a railroad.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
If you go in an ultra-modern building that's 5 stories high, and it's a box look, it defeats everything that this town works so hard to maintain. If you come with a lower perspective and something that's more Newburyport looking, Marblehead looking, something on that idea.
I really appreciate the perspective.
You make
I really appreciate the perspective, and candidly, like, as I mentioned, we are very comfortable making changes of that nature. We can't afford a solid brick building, that's just not in the budget. But we can certainly trade out some of the cladding, we can add more traditional elements, we can eliminate some of the more modern elements. I've already had initial conversations with the architects about this. This is very doable, and I think height aside, we can get to a design that many more people are comfortable with. I've sent the architects, some folks posted pictures on Facebook of like, why can't it look like this? Why can't it look like this? I forwarded all of that to the architects. Like, I mean, I really, like, I mean, I hope just me being here just, it shows you that. Like, we really are planning to incorporate as much feedback as we can.
And I will tell you one more thing. I also work for the school department. In statistics over the last 5 years, statistic-wise, school enrollments have averaged between 1999 and 2010 children enrolling in the school system over the past 5 years. So our enrollments, like they were saying, roughly 18,000 in the town of Winthrop, has not changed over the past 5 years. So your enrollment, what you're finding, is not deviated that much.
So the numbers that I was looking at was from a few years, the number that I was citing was from 2014, but listen, you guys know better than I do. I just took the data from the website.
You need to not look at websites, you really honestly need to do.
The town website,
You need to go to the department heads who give those statistics, because they're the ones who know it.
Yeah, okay. You, sir, you were the first one here. I'm happy to take your question.
I have a couple of comments. Can I approach the board?
Absolutely.
I have just two comments. One is involved with transportation. And I was hoping that young lady from the transportation board was here, but
Mark, can you give everybody the background on who you are and what you've done for the town?
I'm a resident of Winthrop Center, born and raised.
Can't hear you, Mark.
For people looking at this for the first time, this little rectangle, little jog here, just give you a prep. This is Somerset Ave, liquor store in this area here, Joanne's Barber Shop, and Cottage Park Road, which is one way, right? The drawing that you saw, the vehicle, we went over that, right? Down here we have Pleasant Street and Cottage Park Road. In my opinion, and others may disagree with me, but a tremendous amount of traffic is going to be generated at the intersection of Cottage Park Road and Pleasant Street. That may seem trivial, but if you go back when Dunkin' Donuts was approved at the bridge some years ago, at the very last hearing for the ZBA, the question was put in front of the Dunkin' Donuts team, and that question was, do you see any traffic problems? And the answer was no. Everybody here knows there's an issue. So it may seem trivial, but I can almost tell you that there will be an issue. It shows 34 parking spaces, but there's going to be friends and neighbors, UPS trucks, everybody else going down here. So that's going to be a very busy intersection. And I was hoping the young lady from the transportation board was available for that. However, my other concern is the term river came up. John brought up wetlands. You may or may not know, but the spring, the town is trying to get off the ground the infrastructure for the Winthrop Center.
Yes.
I'm not sure, I seriously doubt that the infrastructure is incorporating this project.
Oh, no.
So my question is right here to the civil engineers.
Yes.
What are their comments and what are their what are their recommendations to handle this water? And I'm asking this from a taxpayer's perspective. There's X number of dollars been generated, some of it's grant money for this infrastructure. So if we start incorporating this, and there's some major cost overruns, am I, as a taxpayer, are we gonna be footing the bill to make this work because there's a water problem?
So there's a lot you just brought up that I am not the expert to answer. But the one thing that I will tell you is that in our conversations with DPW throughout this entire process, we have been given assurances that the existing infrastructure can handle this proposal, so that
You don't know this town at all, do you?
How did you find us?
You were lied to.
You know, if it was a one-story maybe, but we're talking 5 stories. We're talking fire suppression, we're talking fire pumps.
So you're bringing up stuff that I will tell you that we spent a lot of time, a lot of money, with these folks who created the plan. I am not the one to address the specifics at all. Their full civil set is submitted as part of the package to the planning board, which you are obviously, that's all public record and more than welcome to look at. It seems like you know how to evaluate that. I would say we've had many conversations about water, we've had many conversations about fire suppression and all of those, but I'm just not the one to kind of speak technically about those topics.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I think this is what we're going to do, because it's been a really long meeting. We're going to close it. I will stay here, and you guys, if anyone wants to, you can keep a line, and I'll answer to whoever wants to stay and talk in this small group. But for now, I think we're going to call the meeting.